Okay, welcome Laura back to another podcast. So for today, we have a very special guest in Dr. Diane Harner. And the topic for today is very close to me and I know to you as well. Can we really do it all? First, before we get started, because I'm sure everyone's waiting to hear the answer, I'd like to introduce Dr. Diane Harner and love to hear a bit about your background and what got you here.
So I have a background in neuroscience. I finished my PhD in 2004, and at that time I made the decision that even though I loved the science and the academia, I wanted to be out amongst the people. And so I then moved into the corporate arena. And that's where I had a lot of different roles, actually. I started off in sales, then I moved into application support, and then finally ended up in leadership. And I have to say, my first year of leadership was an absolute dog's breakfast, like completely messed it up. And so it was at that point I thought, I really need to understand what makes these people tick. So that's when I started to apply the principles of neuroscience to business. So finding out how to get people into performance, how to get more productivity and engagement, and how to connect with them. And so I started to develop workshops within the organisation that I was working for, and I'd been doing that for a couple of years, and then I decided I wanted to play a bigger game. And that's when I decided to open my own business, which is called Clever Minds Consulting, and that was 3 years ago now. And in Clever Minds Consulting, I work with people who are in the sort of mid to senior level executive ranks, and I help them to become more self-aware and deliberate in their thinking and behaviour so they can orchestrate their own success. So it was actually from the mentoring and speaking that I do in Clever Minds Consulting that I really observed that the lines between work and home life are just really blurred. There is no separation anymore. So the people who were coming to see me were talking about their careers, but always there was something going on in the background that was also affecting their performance. And so that's when I decided to enrol in my Masters of Counselling as well, and I'm just completing that now, so I could really offer a holistic service to my clients.
That is beautiful. So really, you're all about the brain, the human experience and our journey. And I think that is absolutely topical for really something that's been bugging me for some time now, meaning a couple of months. Can I really do it all?
And it's definitely a subject that you and I have spoken about a few times. And I think we have both had experience of burnout. We are two type A personalities. We are always trying to do everything at its best all at once. And I think a few months back, Pauline started talking to me about, apparently they were sat at the dinner table and her husband had said something about him not being able to, oh, well, you can't do it all, which of course, knowing Pauline, aggravated her hugely. So we then had a debate for about an hour and a half. I was like, well, he's right, we can't. And she said, no, but we can.
Even more irritated.
So this is something that I think we both try to. So we're both trying to. I think I've kind of come to the opinion that you can't. Pauline is still adamant that you can.
So, and let me just caveat that. Yeah. I believe you can do it all based on what you're going to give up at that point in time. And it's all linear. Yeah. And I look at my life as the whole life, not just for now. So yes, by the time I die, I may not have done it all, but I can't really see any limits, which is the difficult part in me. Hence why we need help.
So let me ask you the first tricky question of the day.
Okay.
Which is, what is all? What is it? Because my guess is that my all is different to your all, is different to Pauline's all. We've all got a different all. And the other tricky question is, who is determining what your all is? Is it social pressure? Is it the media? Is it comparison to other people who are in your network? Is it your family? Or are you really deciding for yourself what your all is?
Wow. That is actually, And I think that's the part that is tricky. And to be really honest with yourself about that as well. I think, we mentioned on one of a previous podcast, we talked about the very fact that at the time in our lives when we have to invest in our career is typically the time when our biological clock starts to tick. And doing it all, I know for me at the moment, is in the next 5 years, could I be the best mom? But could I be the best boss? Could I be the best at where? Could I make sure that I achieved all of these things that I want to achieve all at the same time? But again, the very question of, well, who's defining that? I actually don't know the answer to that.
What about you, Pauline? What do you think about that?
This one is really difficult. I think I definitely do define it, but it's on this preconceived notion that I have a couple of things that I want to experience and I want to be. So I think I want to be a business owner. So I launched Chihu. I want to not be a mum because I'm an aunt and a stepmom, so I feel like my needs are satisfied in those departments. But again, I think I could change my mind next year and still live with it. The unfortunate part is, have I missed the boat? So I think the biological thing is an important part because I have thought about that through the years. Yeah. And I think that's the one where that is the pressure from external expectations. So that for me is a little bit difficult. So I think, can I do it all? Yes, that means having a baby, having a career, having a household, putting pressure on myself to look after the family, do everything for my parents, as well as I'm the only girl. So there's a lot going through that. And yeah, some of it is based on external expectations versus my own. What do I actually want to do?
And I think you've hit on a really interesting point that your all can be different based on the stage of life you're at. So my all at 20 wasn't raising children and doing tuck shop and being the umpire at my daughter's netball. My all was being with my friends and going to uni and having as much fun as I could possibly cram into the time that I had available to me. But now my all is very, very different. So my all now is making sure that I raise the best children that I can, being the best wife that I can, running a successful business and giving back to the community. And I think if we connect really strongly with our purpose and our values, we can really do a great job at determining what our all is based on what we want.
So that's the key point, is knowing what all is to you and knowing how you measure that, I guess, or what you stand up to, and whether that's something that you've created or something external, and really trying to work out what's important, I guess.
And on that, is there, because there's, we talked a lot in an earlier podcast around, what you tell your 20-year-old self and kind of all of the pressure that you put on yourself at that age and earlier in your teens. For women who are 25, 55, it doesn't matter. I think, you understand yourself a lot more as you mature. But for anyone who is out there who what we've just talked about has really resonated with, and who is sitting there thinking, what do I want? And how much of my all is external and is having the harsh reality that probably 90% of it is. How would you suggest you can really connect to what your purpose and your actual values are? And where do you even begin to try and determine those facts for yourself?
That is a massive, massive question.
Yeah. Wait, I'm getting my popcorn. One second.
So I really believe that whilst you can do sort of some navel gazing and sort of introspection about these things, having somebody help you to determine those things and keep you centered on what's yours and what's somebody else's is really important. So when I work with clients, a lot of the pressures that they're feeling aren't because of the pressures that they're putting on themselves because of what they want out of their life. It's because they feel an obligation to, a family member or to the school or to a sporting club or to a brother or a sister. So I think we can really get caught in pleasing everybody else and forgetting about what is really important to us. But I think, if you ask people to tell you what their purpose is and what their values are, I think very few people could come up with it right on the spot.
I agree.
I agree. Totally.
So it's worth doing the exercise. If, now as you're listening to this podcast, you can't articulate what your purpose in life is and your values, I think it's a great exercise to go through and to just sit down with a pen and paper and a glass of wine and just think about what is really important to you. Not as what is important to anybody else, but as what is really important to you to achieve in this life. And what do you want to be remembered for? Because that will connect you to your purpose.
And what if they can't do that?
That's when you engage somebody to help you have those discussions. And there are quite a few people out, in the market who work with purpose, help really people to really connect with their purpose.
Well, what's interesting is that we do it in business all the time. It's rule 101 of building a culture, and it's rule 101 of building a team that is all kind of going in the same direction. You give them a North Star to turn towards, okay? And that is their true north, and that's where they're going. It's interesting, though, that in life, we very rarely look at that as our whole life, and that we actually give our life a North Star, because... yeah, I don't think I've ever done that, which is quite scary.
It is. And I think I only started doing it over the last couple of years. And that's only after I got to a burnout crisis point 4 years ago that I actually started to go, well, I boycotted Christmas 1 year from my family because I did it every single year. So I actually went to Thailand. I was taking photos of myself going, suckers, see ya. And I felt good at the time thinking, but actually what I was doing, that was my escapism, because I was doing all of these things for so many different people, and I still do. And I'm still trying to figure that out. And it's not because someone's giving me a blueprint at this point. I'm just doing one step at a time.
Yeah.
Just walking through, figuring it out. And sometimes I'll just go down the wrong path. But one thing that I'm now starting to learn, which is really quite it's quite, it's the obvious thing. Oh, just do what makes you happy. But that kind of thing. Yeah. And now that's become the new thing. Or just be zen, or do this. And even I think I'm a bit too erratic for that sort of stuff all the time. But I really find like that's actually helping me with my North Star thing. Is this thing finding happiness? Am I feeling joy from it? And trying to work it out from there. Yeah. Because it's really hard. So I want to change the gears a bit. So technically from a neurological point of view, okay, so I've heard you talk about this in seminars and things like that, about multitasking. Because again, that's the perception, if people go, can you really do it all? Can you do everything and be Superwoman or Superman? And the first thing that comes to mind, are they talking about multitasking? What's your thoughts, Diane?
So for a start, multitasking doesn't exist in the brain.
What?
I always like to ask this question in seminars and everybody puts their hand up and I say, well, the bad news is it doesn't exist. So our brain does tasks sequentially. So we can only focus on one thing at a time. So every time we switch from task to task, we are actually switching networks. So if we're working on a document, we have a certain network going that is helping us to complete that document. But if our email dings or our phone goes off, what we have to do to switch tasks to take the phone call or read the email is we need to figure out where we are in our first task, shut down that network, switch over to the other task, start that network up, do that task, shut down that network, come back to the first task again, reorient ourselves to the task and start that network up again. Now, this happens, in the blink of an eye. It's very, very fast. But each time we do that, it's cognitively exhausting. So it takes a lot of our cognitive resource to switch tasks. And this is why people who are switching from task to task to task to task all day long will be absolutely spent at the end of the day. Because the cognitive resource we have available to us in a 24-hour period is exhaustible. And the other thing that's really important here is the part of the brain that is responsible for all of our cognitive thinking, analysis, working memory, is at the front of the brain. It's the prefrontal cortex, and it is a hungry, hungry hippo. It loves to use up all of our cognitive resource, and it's exhaustible. So if we are multitasking all day long, running from here to there to everywhere, using up more cognitive resource than we actually need to use, we will run out of resource by the end of the day. And that's why you get to the end of the day and you're more likely to, snap at your partner if he asks you what you want for dinner, or not have time or energy to interact with your children.
So in the context of, you mentioned before, you're doing it all for you is to be the best wife and the best mother and to be a successful businesswoman. So let's just say that we just define that as for most of our listeners, especially the female ones, that is them trying to do it all. But you've also said that multitasking is incredibly hard. Now, to fit in being the best woman...
it's impossible.
Oh, it's impossible, sorry. To fit in being the best of everything, there's going to be an element of different tasks and probably a very full calendar for a lot of people, okay? Yeah. How do you manage that if you can't multitask? What advice would you give listeners around being able to be the best at all of those things without trying to do it all at once?
So it's all about managing your cognitive resource. So we've got an exhaustible amount of resource and we need to use it in the best possible way we can. So the first is to reduce distraction throughout the day. So if you are doing a task, commit to that task and don't be distracted by your email, your phone going off, online social media platforms. Really dedicate yourself to that task. It's called chunking. So if we dedicate 50 minutes, for example, it can be any amount of time that you like, but if we dedicate 50 minutes to a task and we only do that task, that is going to be much kinder to your cognitive resource than spending 5 minutes on this task, then switching to another task, doing another 5 minutes, having a look on Facebook, seeing what's going on there, coming back, doing another task. All of that is using up extra cognitive resources. So chunking is the number one, and reducing distractions. Definitely the two biggest things.
This is amazing. So I definitely believed that multitasking was possible. In fact, until 36 and a half years ago, what is it?
To be exact.
Until a few months ago, I was rudely awakened to the fact that your brain is sequentially thinking through and processing. I think I was really shocked to hear that, because I was like, oh my God, this is the thing I've been fighting and telling people, yes, you can multitask, do both things. But absolute logic, what you're saying, and obviously it's fact-based, so I'm not going to argue it. So now what I'm going to do in my daily routine at my day job, which is actually requires me to start multiple things, attend meetings all day long without even a bathroom break, I'm actually going to say, stop. You're actually exhausting my cognitive resource.
I can't wait.
Which I'm really excited to say. And I'm going to go, yeah, you need to back off because I can't multitask. Although I will try. No, but it's a good excuse and it's a good realization, because I really was putting all this pressure on myself to balance it all. So I was really interested to hear your point of view on that one, because I think a lot of us walk around thinking, oh, we
can just keep going. And I think the other thing is I want to definitely pick your brains about burnout as well, and what's actually happening when you get to that point in your brain. Because I think we've both experienced this on quite serious levels.
Yes.
And we're certainly not the only women out there to have. But how do you avoid burnout? Because this is probably when you talk about your cognitive load, if you're in a fast-paced position, you successful as defined by corporate and your six-figure salarying it up, you're doing really well, you've got 10, 15, 20 people who all rely on you and that level of responsibility, there is going to be a lot of work there, for in terms of your day-to-day, and you utilizing what you have in your brain for you to then get home, and when that's gone, how do you then give back to your family? I mean, that is, and I guess the challenge and what I see all the time, and I know some incredible women who've got 5 children, and they're at every single community event, and they're hosting this, and they're doing this, and they're umpiring at their netball team, but they're also working 70 hours a week and going to networking events and somehow keeping a house in order and keeping this in order. And I look at them and I think, you can't, this isn't sustainable long term. And something is giving somewhere. They're giving their best to somewhere over another. Would you say that is your only option?
I think you've just brought up a really important topic, which is that we only see what other people want us to see.
Yes.
And what we do is we compare what we're doing to this very polished version of what other people put out to the community. So we can, look at a woman that is doing all that and thinking, my gosh, she's amazing. But we don't know what's happening when she goes home. Maybe she's drinking 2 bottles of wine a night to cope with the fact that she's got so much on, and she's racked with guilt about the fact that she's not able to spend, weekends with her children or read them a bedtime story at night. So we can never know what's going on behind the scenes, and that is why it's so important not to compare what we're able to achieve with what we believe somebody else is able to achieve.
That is so difficult in today's age, right? Because everything is online, everything is social. You're exposed to everything that everyone else is doing and the best part that they project. Yeah. And then you're not thinking about, okay, well, what is that coming at a cost of something else?
But that goes back to the start, though, what we talked about you actually being able to decide what is important to you based on your own beliefs and your purpose and your own values, because I actually think it's going to be harder and harder as the generations come through because of the exposure that they've had to other people and how big their tribes are now, to actually ask themselves that question. Because I struggle with that, but I could only imagine being 20 years old right now, having grown up with social media, having grown up with everything being looked at, and having to work out what's mine and what isn't.
Yeah, but that's even with us. That's even with me at my age. Like, I have this own, pressure on myself and it's not that I sit there and go, I'm going to do everything. I actually don't even think that lateral about it when I've picked it. Unfortunately, I make some decisions without thinking of the effort and energy that I'm going to have to put into it. And you come across as though, like I have some people go, Pauline, like, how do you keep doing so much? Even my niece who's living with me at the moment, everyone knows about my niece now. She goes, aren't you tired? She's like, I said, yes, I'm exhausted. I'm on the edge. Don't come near me. Yeah. So you have to kind of like, she's like, oh, good. I was thinking you're a robot. I am a bit of a robot at the moment. Yeah. But I can see a light at the end of the tunnel.
What me and you have in common, and I actually want to talk to you about this as well, Diane, because I know that we do this thing where we go, right. And at that point where we've got a decent amount of energy, we say yes to the yes, to that, to that, to that. And over the years, we've got better at saying no to anything we don't want to do. But then what happens is the list of things that we do want to do just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. You know what I mean? So like, at the moment, you've got a full-time job, you've got Jihu, you've got this podcast, you've got 1,000,005 other things. They're all things you want to do.
Absolutely.
So how do you squeeze them all in, and how do you possibly manage it all? Because it's the amount of times I've looked at my diary on a Monday morning and it's just back to back. There's no time in between. And in my head, I'm like, you'll be fine. You'll be okay. Wednesday afternoon hits and I'm done. So burnout, what is happening when we burn out and when we do overcommit and when we do run ourselves into the ground? Because I think this is a really important subject. It's an important thing for people to recognize when it's starting to happen and to know what to do to get ahead of it.
Yep. So the first thing that we do is we normalize everything. So our brain normalizes the level of activity that we're at right now. So you could be racing around being everything to everyone and doing everything for everyone, and you normalize that as, okay, this is my life. This is what I do. And so when somebody asks you to do something else, you go, oh yeah, I've got all of this covered. I can add something in here. So I think that's what we do. You know, we normalise whatever level of activity we are engaged in at the time. And it brings up another interesting point about resource. So it's not just about cognitive resource, it's about resources that you have around you. So do you have family there that you can help that can help you raise the children? Do you have a community of people that will be willing to, you know, make your family a dinner one night when you're away? So it's all about the resource that you have external to you, which can also have a massive impact on how much you can do. So if you look at Angelina Jolie, for instance, like she is a amazingly capable actress and director. She's got 6 or 7 children that she's raising. She's running charities. She's an ambassador for the UN. So this is a woman who, you know, we look at and we go, oh my gosh, she is doing it all.
Yeah.
But she has a massive team of people behind her that are orchestrating everything. So I think that's a really important point as well, is how much resource do you have that you can call on to support you in doing this? And that has to factor in to the decisions you make about what you say yes to. And getting back to your original question about burnout. So another one of the functions of our prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain that does all of these wonderful cognitive analytical tasks, is about regulating emotions. Okay, so this includes stress, this includes happiness and sadness and fear and anger and all of those emotions that come from the back of our brain. Now, if you have a really cognitive job, if you are doing a lot of things and you're trying to multitask, switch tasks, it is the same resource that is allowing you to do those cognitive tasks that is responsible for your emotional regulation. So if you're using all of your resource up in your day job doing all of those cognitive analytical tasks, what's left at the end of the day for emotional regulation is very small. Now, when we're talking about burnout, this is cumulative from day to day, week to week, year to year. If you're always running down your cognitive resource and leaving nothing left for emotional regulation, the chances of you burning out, having an episode, a panic attack, whatever it might be, will be greater unless you're addressing that resource and replenishing it regularly. So on a day-to-day basis, that looks like brain breaks. That looks like only having a 50-minute meeting and having 10 minutes in between to refresh your resources. It looks like mindfulness. It looks like exercise. It looks like sleep. So we need to make sure that we are replenishing our resources so we don't get into the situation where we just don't have anything left for emotional regulation. Now, adding to that, if you do have a very busy life and you've got 10 balls in the air at any one time, the anxiety and the stress and the emotion that is associated with that is higher. So it takes even more resource to be able to keep that all under wraps so you can then function in your very cognitive job.
Isn't that amazing?
I feel like we need to go and just take ourselves off to a desert island and just be like really happy
I'm
and
exhausted.
relaxed. I know, me too. No, but it's true. But I think this is the thing. I think for me, and I, at the moment, I'm going on my own kind of journey with this because I have never been able to proactively look after myself. Okay, which is
really common.
Yeah. So what'll happen is I take on, and it's not. It used to be because I couldn't say no. Now I'm quite comfortable saying no, but I want to do all these things, okay? And for me, I remember saying to my husband once, I wish I could take my brain out of my head, put it on charge, have a backup brain that's fully charged, put it back in, just keep going. Imagine how much more you could get done. And he was like, you are mental. I'm like, no, but imagine if you didn't ever had to sleep, how much, you could double your amount of achievements in a lifetime. And he's like, yeah, but you're not living your life like that. You can't operate like that. But in my head, I'm a very efficient, let's move, let's get it done. That would make sense to me if I could have a brain on charge so that I could just constantly move it out. Anyway, but a bit crazy. But I think for me, I always used to, I would take on stuff, I'd get to the point where I'd completely exhausted myself, and I'd start to notice the signs. I couldn't sleep properly. I would either put on weight or lose weight. My skin would get really bad. All of those little telltale signs that, okay, you've gone too far. And then I would react, I'd go for a massage, and I would, maybe take a couple of days. Oh, wow, it's been 8 months and you haven't had a holiday. Right, maybe you should do something to look after yourself. So I'd react to the burnout or the upcoming burnout. I'd feel great after a few days of massages and sort myself out. And then I think, right, I can just go again. And someone once told me, they said, you're like a Ferrari. You're like a Ferrari. You are built to go fast. If you're not going fast, you feel like you're not living up to what you could go and do.
What you were designed to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but also, if you had a Ferrari, wouldn't you leave it by the side of the road sometimes so people could admire it? And wouldn't you put more effort into looking after it than you would a normal car? You would, because you paid so much for a Ferrari, right? So you'd be looking after it. And the other thing is, if you let that Ferrari, if you drove that Ferrari 200, 300 k's an hour, whatever its top speed is, right? I'm not very good with cars, but let's say whatever its top speed is, and you kept driving it at that, eventually you would wrap yourself around a tree, right?
Well, that's why they
Or
have
it
the
would break
change
down.
tyre stations.
But this is where you're like me with the brain and the
This is
charger
why
thing.
you have to quickly, a few seconds,
know.
change the tyres, let's go.
But this is it. I think it's a constant battle when around you everyone seems to be doing it all, and all you want to do is be the best you can be as a Type A personality. And never have we lived in a time where we've got more options and opportunity than we have now. And I don't know about you, but I feel like I need to take advantage of every single one of those. But it's exhausting.
But
It really is.
I think this is the part you tapped on. Are we using the resources not only within ourselves but available to us? So I know, most recently I've now got a virtual personal assistant because I've launched Chihu, obviously. So it's amazing. Like I actually did not know how to use her in the beginning. I was like useless, trying to go, okay, well, now what do I do? Okay, I've got help. Now what? So even trying to, once you've figured out what your resource is, being able to ask for help is actually quite a struggle for us. So I think it's like, oh God, now I've got her, she's sitting idle. Do I have to give her stuff? Now that's going to take a lot of energy to think about what to give her. Once you get over those barriers of asking for help, which is actually quite difficult, then before you know it, you do have that, capacity, the extra brain power has just kicked in.
And do you think that a lot of it is the reason we maybe don't ask for help, or the reason that we do judge ourselves and think that we have to be the best at everything? That all obviously comes down to our core belief system, and that was established, from what I understand, when you were a young child, at the age of 30, at the age of 40. Can you do anything to adjust that belief system slightly? Can you start to be, instead of having the belief system that's defining everything from the age of 5, as an older woman, can you start maybe shifting that to something that's a bit more sensible for yourself?
So this is really, really important. Everything that you do in your life is a choice. You have the choice to engage in whatever activity you want to, or not engage in whatever activity you want to. Whatever is happening to you right now, you have chosen it. And I think we forget that. We forget we have the power of choice. So the superpower in our current landscape and in the landscape going forward is going to be self-awareness.
Oh, I love that.
Is going to be the ability to check in with yourself and go, how am I going here?
Yeah.
Am I okay? Is this too much? Do I need to make a different choice because I'm right on the edge of burnout? Do I need to make a different choice because this isn't my goal? This is somebody else's agenda that I'm trying to live out to make them happy. So
Wait, I just sit in that. That is amazing, Diane. I really love that.
Yeah. And so that's what I aim to do, to help people become more self-aware and deliberate.
Yep.
Deliberate about the decisions that they make, the choices that they make, and what they choose to do in their life. The other thing that I see, and I have a diagnostic that helps people understand what their subconscious habits of thought are that get in the way of their goal pursuit and influence their thinking and behaviour. And across the board, the thing that is going to kill us all is perfectionism. We have these unhealthy expectations of what we should be able to achieve. And anything less than perfection is often seen as failure or not living up to some predetermined expectation that we have of ourselves or somebody else has of us. Now, there's two parts to perfectionism. There's positive perfectionism, which drives our ambition, which drives our ability to do a really great job and have that positive self-concept about achievement. But then the other side is negative perfectionism. So negative perfectionism is very simple. It's the fear of making mistakes. And that fear of making mistakes is what is driving a lot of our anxiety, a lot of our fear, and a lot of our propensity to work too hard, to hold on to projects for too long, to say yes to the things that we probably should say no to, or we don't delegate the things that we should. Trust is really difficult for people that show strong traits of negative perfectionism because, and I'm a card-carrying perfectionist myself, no one will do it as well as I can do it. And that's what we tell ourselves. So we do it all. We say yes to every project. We hold on to things that we shouldn't because we want it to be done perfectly. And the thing about perfectionism, it's completely subjective and unattainable. My level of perfectionism or my idea of perfectionism is different to yours. And it's different to yours, Laura. So how do we ever manage or measure when we've reached it? We never know. So we just keep striving.
How do you change that around? How do you change your from negative to positive perfection? What sort of things do you look out for that you recognise in yourself to stop doing?
One of the biggest things is receiving feedback, how you receive feedback. So people have a strong drive for negative perfectionism. When they hand something in, when they complete a project, they immediately start thinking of how they could have done it better. How if they had more time, they would have changed this and changed that. They also respond in a negative way to feedback, whether it's constructive or not. They take feedback very personally. And so that's another sign. It's about holding on to projects for too long. And the question I started to ask myself is, if I spent another 2 hours on this project, would anybody be able to tell the difference between what I submitted 2 hours later and what I submitted now? And the answer is usually no. But we hang on to it because what if there's a mistake? If I hand this in, somebody's going to read it and then they're going to evaluate me. They're going to judge me, and I don't want them to judge me negatively. So I'll just hang on to it for a bit longer and make it absolutely as perfect as I can.
Wow. I'm just thinking about every single decision I've made in the last 10 years and why I've made them. No, it's interesting though, isn't it? I think you didn't talk about the feedback before. I actually love negative feedback. I really like negative. Like I kind of like getting hit with it because my perfectionism is more important than me. Which sounds really weird, but just bear with me. So, for me, I want to get the best. I want to get the best outcome. I want to get the best outcome that possibly is. So I will actively go and find people who will pull apart what I have. I just let it bounce off. It doesn't really hit me personally at all because I want to get the best. But also what happens is if I get good feedback, for me, I'm like, okay, why are we talking about that? I don't take positive feedback very well. I hear it and I go, well, yeah, that's what we were trying to do. Let's keep going.
Yeah, keep moving.
Let's keep yeah. To me, I'm like, we don't need to celebrate that.
Don't have time for that.
So what actually happens is for me, and I've seen this happen all the way through my life, is that I have a goal, and unless for me, I've already smashed that goal. Whatever I need to do between, there's point A where I am now, point B is the goal. it is inevitable that I will hit point B. There is absolutely no way that I'm going to let anything get in the way of that. And if anything, I'm already thinking I'm probably going to hit point C. I won't tell anyone about that just yet, but I will hit C. When they think I'm going to hit B, I'll be on C. Yeah. If I can't get to B for some reason, I find that really, really hard. If I can't get there, and I'm very resourceful, I know what my strengths are and my weaknesses are, and I will rally people around to help with that, or I'll outsource to someone who can do it, because to me it's just the outcome. I just want to get to the bloody outcome. But I don't think I celebrate the wins enough. Yes. I actually think I just say, well, yeah, that's what we were trying to do. Why are we celebrating it?
And isn't that part of the Superwoman dilemma, though? Like, so trying to do so many different things and having that so full of achieving everything. But are you really like standing there and actually appreciating what you've done, or celebrating the small things? And how are you measuring that? What is everything? Because it is that sort of, prototype that we've all seen on TV and ads and in online and on LinkedIn, when we're looking at all the professional people and what they're achieving and looking at all of that. But is anyone going, oh shit, what happened through that journey of what they were trying to do and the pitfalls that they had just to even get there?
See, for me, I don't even look at, for me, I'm about the goal. And this is why I burn out a lot, because I kill myself on trying to get to the goal. Because for me, there is nothing else outside of that. And I have no time for anything but that. And that's when I go crazy. That's when I hit burnout.
So when do you experience joy about reaching point B?
See, by the time I'm at point B, about when I'm about probably a week out of point B, I'm thinking, okay, where's the next one? So I actually never reached the joy, ever.
And you know what? Sitting in the amazingness that is you and what you've been able to achieve is a really crucial part to replenishing that resource. To congratulate yourself, to sit in the brilliance of you. And not many people do that, men or women, actually. We don't sit and think, what have I done this week? That is outstanding. I am grateful to have the opportunity to do all of these things and be able to achieve them in an amazing way. Because how many times have people stood in front of you and said, you're amazing, Laura. You're amazing, Pauline. And you've gone, no, I'm just me. I'm just me, because that's what we do.
I'm doing what's expected.
We normalise it.
Yes, we do normalise it.
That's the normalising. There you go.
I feel like we've had a therapy session. We have. Okay, so with the question of having to do it all, or thinking that we can do it all, what would you give someone tip from a neuroscientist in terms of to go through that question and decide whether you can or not? Where would you start? What would you do? Any tips?
I would start with what's important to me. Connect with value and purpose. And make sure your agenda is your own. Make sure your choices are your own and you're deliberate in those. Be able to check in with the resources that you have available to you and use them. Don't think that you can't call on people in order to support you in these times. And the last thing that we haven't really touched on in detail, but you talked about in the beginning, is what are you willing to sacrifice to connect with your value and purpose? Because sometimes there are things that you do have to say no to, and you have to say not now to. So not everything is I must do it now. It's maybe I'll do that next year. And put that, in the 12-month plan or the 2-year plan or whatever it is you have.
And this was the difference that I was saying. So when I ask myself, can I really do it all? I look at it at that time spectrum and I put it into chunking it. Yep. And I actually, apart from chunking my resource, I've actually chunked out, okay, well, I can fit in, mine's quite time logical. So Chi Who launched last month, this month I'm focusing on podcast / more. The part I do forget, because I've normalised it, is I have a full challenging day job. I've normalized that for quite some time though, so let's not go there because I might snap. No, I'm kidding. So this is the part where I think, yeah, I can do it all. It'll come at a cost. Something will come at a cost. Unfortunately, sometimes it's my loved ones, which is what took me down the journey of doing my app in the first place, is I actually wanted to outsource tasks to my tribe, and carry the load of your loved ones and share the love a little bit without having to have the conversation, because I'd rather not confront it. And then everything's coming out now. So, and then that's the part, is because, I've normalized it a lot. So I had to think of a way, how can I do this better? How can I actually multitask more? How can I do that more? And still be able to balance it all. But now since have learnt that, everything is a little bit about timing and at what point. I can't do it all at once, but maybe I can do it all sequentially.
Yes, exactly. But the very last thing is we must be more self-aware. We must check in with ourselves to see how we're going and recognise when we're at a point where we need to just put tools down and do a bit of self-care. And that needs to happen daily. And we need to make sure that we make time for mindfulness. And mindfulness doesn't have to be, going away on a yoga retreat and spending days on end, considering who you are as a person. Mindfulness for me is every morning I sit on my back deck with a cup of tea. I feel the warmth of the cup in my hands. I listen to the birds, I watch the trees, and I pat my dog. Because what mindfulness is really about is being in direct experience with your senses, being in the right here and the right now. That's all it is. So it's really, really simple to do. And 5 to 10 minutes a day makes an amazing amount of difference. And if I don't do that 10 minutes in the morning, I notice. So that would be my last thing, is just be really self-aware and check in with yourself.
Amazing. This is beautiful. So the new mantra for Superwoman equals self-awareness.
Definitely.
Being kind, listening to yourself and not to others.
Yes.
Amazing.
Diane, this
Thank
has been
you
fantastic.
so much.